joined here by Timbers newcomer Cole Bassett.
Hey guys, I would normally shake all your hands, but coming off a bit of a cold, so good to see you all though. Yeah. Hola, ¿todo bien?
Cole, thank you for joining us. We're going to open it up to media. Who wants to start us off? Adam?
Cole, you've obviously been one of the best midfielders in MLS the last couple of years, and I'm sure you had options across the league. Why was Portland ultimately the decision for you?
I think this team's kind of had our number in Colorado for quite a bit, so that definitely gave me incentive to come here. There were a few options to go elsewhere, but I think in the end, the project that Phil and Ned proposed to me and the ambition that the club has, you see it with Merritt, being around all the time, how much the owner cares. I can't say it's like that at all clubs I've been to. So I think for me to end up here and be in a place where they really care about the football and want to win. I've been in this league far too long to not win a trophy. So that's one of the main reasons I came here is to win a trophy.
Jeremy?
Hi, Cole. Welcome to Portland.
Thank you.
Phil just was speaking here about you, and he described you sort of as a Frank Lampard-type box-to-box midfielder. Do you see yourself in that kind of role?
Yeah, the first conversation that we had when we hopped on the phone, that's kind of the player. When the new gaffer in Colorado, Matt Wells, came in, that was the guy that I described to him, just because they're similar age, and I think he would know him growing up. Never said a word to Phil about how I see myself as a player, and that was the first guy he mentioned. So it was kind of funny. I said to him afterwards, I don't even need to say much. You see me exactly how I see myself as a player, and I think that was a huge reason of why I wanted to come here. Is I think they see me in a certain role that I don't think I've gotten to play as much the last few years. In 2024, I had a good run as a box-to-box midfielder that gets to arrive late and score goals. And last year I was moved around quite a bit. So I think finding some stability in the middle of the park, I think should be good for me and hopefully good for this team.
You mentioned you've been in this league for a long time. As you kind of look at leadership as a part of this group, there's certainly some names that can fit that role. Where do you see yourself fitting kind of in the leadership structure of this club?
You try not to come in right away and, put your foot down and try to be outwardly vocal in a sense. But I've noticed that there is a little bit of lack of vocal leadership so far when we're on the field. So I think I can step right in that role, especially being in the middle of the field and trying to direct guys, especially defensively, using my Spanish as well. It's not 100% fluent, but being able to help guys like Pipe and Kelsey just for moments of when I want them to go and stuff like that. So, I see myself as a leader. I was, one of the captains in Colorado. So, you obviously got to earn the respect here. I don't come in, asking for any of those roles, but I think you can earn that sense of leadership throughout the group with your performances.
Hey, Cole, welcome to Portland.
Thank you.
Coming to the Timbers, are you coming into the season with like a chip on your shoulder, or what are you kind of striving for this year? Absolutely.
It's, a big year, I think, for every footballer in the world. You got the World Cup this year. You got your last MLS season before it kind of turns the calendar, and you have that sprint season next year that, it'll propose different challenges and stuff like that. But, this is the last true season for a year and a half. So I think for me, it's really a chance to show myself, improve myself in a good team. I think this is, like I said, the other reasons I want to come here, it's got a good group of players. The attacking front four is up there with the group I had in Europe at Feyenoord. There's a lot of quality here, and I think they can bring the best out of me, and I can hopefully bring the best out of them. So I definitely got something to prove. I'd rather do my talking on the pitch than, tell you guys everything and put all my goals out there. But I do think, as every footballer knows, the World Cup's this year, and that's, on everybody's minds.
You spent so much time with the Colorado organization, but you did just talk about your stint in Europe, and I'm curious what kind of that brought to you in terms of your development and then what you took away from your time playing out there.
Was a great experience. I don't regret one bit of it. I was lucky enough to have Arne Slot there as my coach when I was over there, and we had a great team. A lot of those guys are playing in top leagues now, and good friends now to look back on and, share experiences with. But yeah, as a young player, moving overseas for the first time, moving out of your parents' house for the first time when it happened, was a big learning moment for me. And I think, it's simple stuff in football, but I think the way that they taught the game over there was stuff that I've never seen over here, and a lot of it had to do with rondos and the way that you manipulate your hips as a central midfielder, just little stuff like that I think I find very helpful to my game nowadays, and that I don't need to constantly work on with the coaches or go to nowadays just because it's ingrained in me. But yeah, forever grateful for that experience, and you never know, one day you could end up back over there.
Hey, welcome to Portland, man.
Thank you.
Curious about just your early first impressions being in this city, being in this building, and then also just, having to play against this team and now being on this side. What do you think that will be like playing in this building?
It's great to be in that locker room, I'll tell you that. I think I only had one win here in 7 years, and it was during COVID, so no fans were here. So that was, we really didn't get any part of Providence Park where the fans were at least going home unhappy. But I hope that now that it continues, that Portland continues to beat Colorado and we continue to win a lot of games here. But I'm very excited to be here. I think Merritt does a great job running this club, and everything that they give for the players is everything you can ask for as a player. It's all up to you to go out and perform on the field because they give you everything you need off the field. So it's been a great experience so far. A lot of stuff going on, trying to find a place to live and get settled pretty quickly. But I think I've been lucky that me and Alex Bonatek have came in at the same time, and we had a mate that was a mutual friend. So we've kind of gotten pretty close, quickly together as we're the two newcomers in a sense. But it's been good so far. But I think winning on the weekends will make it even better.
You talk about facing Portland so much. I kind of want to dig into that. Who specifically sort of gave you fits when you were defending them in midfield, and beyond just like the atmosphere, the actual players from the Portland Timbers? Did that kind of help your recruitment as well?
It did. I think, when I go way back, because my debut was here, I think it was Valeri was probably the one that gave us the most fits, maybe Blanco, back in that era. Obviously going against Diego Chara was never my favorite thing. And I remember talking about with a lot of my assistant coaches when I was quite young that, this is kind of the level and standard of a MLS defensive midfielder that, if you want to be a good attacking midfielder in this league, this is who you're going to have to beat. So it was always a challenge when I got to go up against Diego, and now be alongside him is, it's a lot more fun than going against him, I'll tell you that. There's been so many good players over the years and so many good matchups, facing Portland in the 2021 playoffs when they went to the Cup as well. I believe Mabiala scored in that one. So, there's been a lot of players that gave us fits. Anthony over the last few years has been one of them for Colorado. But I'm glad now that I'm with them on this side, and hopefully those guys can continue. That was one of the first things I said to Anthony is, keep scoring goals against Colorado when we get them next week.
Okay, we have one last question in English and then a few in Spanish.
Cole, just on the back of that, talking about Portland players, Diego was obviously just in here. Can you just talk about what it's like working with him in the midfield, what your impressions are?
Such a humble guy. I didn't know exactly what to expect when I came in. I didn't think he spoke that good of English. I didn't know just because on the field he was always speaking Spanish. But, came in and such a nice guy, so respectful. Always there if you need him to ask, simple questions. But, always has a smile on his face. And he covers for you. I think for me as an attacking midfielder or a guy in a double pivot that likes to be more advanced and not worry about what's behind me, he just provides that cover. So I think for me, it gives me a sense of freedom on the field to go do my thing and go do what I'm good at. So I'm grateful to play against or play next to him or Joao or whoever's alongside of me. I think all of them provide that same sort of cover that allows me to flourish.
Okay, we're going to do some in Spanish. You're comfortable with
Yep.
that? Okay, we'll go with Bronco.
Gracias, bienvenido a Portland para la Grande Radio. Viniendo de Colorado, es un clima y una ciudad muy diferente. ¿Cómo sientes Portland? Desde fuera y llegando, ¿cómo sientes el equipo y cuáles son tus objetivos?
Sí, el clima es muy diferente, es como Europa. Pero sí, estoy muy contento para estar aquí. Mis objetivos son ganar trofeos y terminar en los 4 lugares arriba de la tabla para tener un partido en los playoffs en casa. Pero para mí, nunca ves en mi carrera, tuve una temporada con 10 goles. Una vez tuve 9, pero esa vez quiere 10 goles en una temporada. Y para mí es mi gol para este año y ojalá que puedo tenerlo. Sí. Es un equipo con muchos atacantes buenos. Es diferente que Colorado. No tuvimos laterales con mucho, ¿cómo se dice? Speed. Yeah. I see the team as a group that has a lot of pace that gets in behind and stuff like that. I think we have a small group right now. I think we all know that we're going to add a few players here soon. But we feel very, very comfortable with where we're at in the group, and because we haven't signed as many guys yet, I think it's allowed our group to get comfortable in these relationships that we've had in preseason. There hasn't been so much changing so far. So it's been good to build relationships with the group that we have. Yeah, of course. Yeah, gracias.
Hola.
Hola.
Español, va a ser fácil pregunta.
Sí.
Me gustó que dijiste que elegiste Portland porque no has conseguido un campeonato con Colorado. ¿Por qué crees que Portland puede conseguir un campeonato?
Porque hay jugadores aquí que tienen la cualidad para ganar. Christopher Velde tiene mucha cualidad. Pipe More sabe cómo ganar. Diego Chara ganó una copa aquí. Hay muchos jugadores que saben cómo ganar y en Colorado somos jóvenes y a veces es un poquito tan difícil para ganar cuando tienes un grupo que es joven. Entonces es una temporada larga, pero si firmas más jugadores y usamos que tenemos aquí, creo que cuando los playoffs llegan, vamos a estar listos para eso. Yeah, claro.
There. Thanks for the time, Cole.
Yeah, of course, guys.
We'll have Alex up next.